Hello and welcome to this week's edition of the WRAP podcast. I'm Jamie and join me this week is Harley, James and Martin. Good evening, chaps.
Good
Evening.
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 So there's going to be no drink of the week. Let's just get it out of the way now. We might have to knock this segment on the head for a little while because not all of us are getting involved for various reasons, so we don't really see the value of it going forwards. I'm not saying it's gone forever, but for now we're going to put it on the back burner. So let's get straight into the news, shall we? Big news that broke this morning. So Wales lock Jake Ball has announced his retirement. Ball, who is currently playing in Japan for the NEC Green Rockets, will hang up his boots at the end of the season for family reasons and to put more time into his new supplement and wellness company. So Ball earned 50 caps for Wales and he spent 9 seasons. I didn't realise it'd been that long. 9 seasons in Cleffley, making 133 appearances for the Scarlets. Yeah, fine player, Jake Ball. Martin, as the one I took on the pod, a word, please, for Jake Ball.
One word isn't enough. He was a colossus of a player, for Wales as well as a Scarlet. We still haven't properly replaced him. Alex Craig is sort of filling that mold now, but even he's not going to be here long term. And one thing I love about, a lot of stories with players, and Jake Ball is one of them. When he first arrived, okay, he had a lot of potential, but he was a project player. It was like, if he didn't amount to anything, same as Tag Byrne, if they didn't amount to anything, it wouldn't have, been water off a duck's back. But to go on and have the career that he did, and realistically, he's had 5 years away from Wales. That's another 5 years. We could have had him, not just in Wales, but in any setup, and he would have added so much to that.
Yeah, absolutely. Harley, a word for Jake Ball? Was you a big fan of Jake Beast, as he was known to a lot of Scarlet supporters?
Yeah, I think one of the big things about Jake Ball was he just added something I think Wales packs have lacked, and it's just a bit of grunt. He may not have made many meters, but he seemed to pull 2 or 3 people when he got them. He was just very aggressive, admittedly sometimes for comical effect, like when he squared up against Faf de Klerk. So it just sort of picks him up, I think, which is more hilarious than I think. But he just added a bit of nastiness to that pack, which I think is something we've been lacking for quite a while. I think, I just always had a soft spot for anyone with a great big ginger beard.
Yeah, quite right too. Really good ball carrier, big grunty lock, and we struggled for a while to replace him, didn't we? I mean, you could argue we got that now in Will Rowlands, but I think Wales did miss, and Scarlets, of course, missed Jake Ball when he left, for sure. James, any thoughts on Jake Ball retiring? I know you was a big fan of his, wasn't you?
Yeah, I like Jake Ball. Solid servant for the Scarlets. Probably the unsung hero of that history making 2017 side. Was he around that side? Or am I thinking of a different side?
No, he was involved.
It was him in that second row, yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think he was a bit. He's one of them ones you don't realize who you got until you got him, type thing.
Yeah.
Really good at what he does, but he fit that Gatland mold of what we needed at the time really well. And yeah, but again, struggled to replace him. I won't lie, I thought he'd retired already.
Yes, but I posted the story to WhatsApp, and you did say to me, I thought he'd already retired.
I'll be completely honest with you. I thought he'd gone back to Australia to retire. But good on him. Good cricketer as well.
I forgot he played cricket. Yeah, I forgot about that.
That's why he was out in Australia, wasn't he?
That's right. Yeah. Where did he come from? He come from Western Force. Was it Western Force?
He was in the Western Force Academy. Yeah.
Yeah, good play. All the best to him and his family, and good luck with his new business. In other news then, Ospreys have announced a development fixture against the Dragons. That's to be played at St Helens this Saturday. There was a development fixture at Ronnie Parade last weekend, Dragons versus Scarlets, and it was the Dragons development team that came out on top, bumping Scarlets 73-21, with a home side running in 11 tries. Didn't see that scoreline come in, to be honest, but it's only a development game, but it's nice to see the Dragons win a game, isn't it, I suppose? And it's a good opportunity for both teams to, give minutes, isn't it, to fringe players and their youngsters. It's a worthy exercise, I think, for both teams.
Coach Bounce, what are you saying?
Our coaching staff had nothing to TNT had nothing to do with this. It was Tom Hancock, who's the senior academy coach, was
Don't say that now. Wales Online will be saying he'll be his new manager.
Oh gosh. Sorry, Martin, do you want to say something then?
Yeah, it was the same on our end. Scott Snedden, our transition lead, he's the one that took up the team. I'll be honest, I expected a Dragons when I did not expect that scoreline, mine. Just looking at
73 points.
just looking at the age profile of the squads. I mean, we had a handful of boys who were still under 18s, and then when you were bringing the likes of Joel Mahoney, Lloyd Lewis, Di Richards, I mean, that's not fair, man. You're bringing this onto kids. I mean, Joel
Yeah, it's
Mahoney has been
SRC
outstanding.
players. They're SRC players. I'm surprised the Dragons took that route, to be honest, to
That's the
plug a
system.
few players.
That's what you got to do. And it's not like the Dragons. I will say it's not like the Dragons had a completely I know you had your Joe Davis as captain or whatever, but ultimately these games are only they're developing the younger players, but they're also keeping the wider match squad fit. That
I can't say anything for the Dragons. I don't know their squad in detail that much, but I don't think there was. I think it was maybe 2 senior squad players for the Scarlets in this: Ben Williams and Charlie Titcombe. No one else is really in that 38-40 first team squad.
I suppose as well, though, it helps that Scarlets have for now have been blessed without having to worry about injuries and stuff. Whereas I feel like with the Dragons, it's a case of we need to get players, we need to get bodies ready and match fit just in case they do have to.
And
you've
got 10 people now in international squads.
Yeah.
Which was obviously not helping.
I said I think that's part of the reason why Cardiff aren't doing any of these pre-things is basically because we've got one fit hooker in the squad with Evan Lloyd with Wales.
Well,
unless we say Anna's probably called him up for training as well.
This is exactly why they don't do these games during the season. You don't have the bodies to do the boys playing in the SRC as well. It just can't be done. And I'm hopefully there'll be more of these games next season. That is something that I've spoken with Scott Snedden about. He wants more of these fixtures. The autumn is the only window though, so it's gonna only be 3-4 weeks.
Yeah, I remember
2 or 3 games max.
Ospreys had one against Scarlets a few years ago.
Yeah,
which is quite a good game actually. I know Ospreys have got all their young SRC lads in this week. So you like Sakian Haya, Harrison Doe. I wouldn't be surprised if they pulled from the wider SRC squad as well. So you like your Barnaby Woodells from Bridgend, who was with Ospreys in the summer, who was name checked actually by Bradley Davis on the Sport in Wales podcast. Maybe like a Ryan Wilkins might, be in and around the, maybe a Ben Burnell. These boys getting second chances as well as the lads who are already signed to sort of Ospreys contracts but are in the SRC. So it'd be really interesting to see. I'm actually hoping to come down for it.
Someone I'd like to see is Aberafan Ed Dunford. I know he's from across the border, but he's looked outstanding this season.
Yeah, watched him at universities. He was a fresher when I joined Swansea University. Good player in a probably shit Cardiff uni team at the time. But yeah, I think 10 is something we're actually quite blessed with at the Ospreys at the minute. Young 10-wise, you've got young Charlie Thomas, who's actually gone back he's on a dual permit with Aberafan and Tom Maurer. You've got another young 10 in there as well. So but Ben Dunford is someone, definitely who could be in consideration.
I watched the highlights of that Dragons Scarts game before we started recording. There were some lovely tries being scored. And I wonder, actually, I'm going to ask Mark this. Do you think Lloyd Lewis could do a job at pro level? If the Dragons had an injury crisis in the back three, do you think he could step up to pro rugby?
I don't think there needs to be an injury crisis. I think he can step up now.
Really?
There's quite a few boys in our SRC level. Now, I know there's a lot of them who are academy or former academy. I mean, I count Aaron Warren and Harry Dole as 2. I know they're both with Llandovery, but those are 2 boys that could quite seamlessly step up.
He's 28 now, Lloyd Lewis, and he came through the Drags Academy. For whatever reason, it didn't work out, but he's still really quick, isn't he? He's got really good pace. I'm just thinking, with Ashton always injured, Jordan Williams, etc., would he be a better option than those guys? Probably would at the moment, wouldn't he?
He's proven try scorer as well.
Yeah. No, yeah. Okay. Any other news then before we move on? Anything you guys want to mention?
Should I mention the rumor I heard earlier? I mean, Martin might know this. Martin, are you hearing Stephen Varney to Scarlets next year, like I am?
I haven't heard it from people I would usually trust, but I have heard it, yeah.
I just heard it, nothing in press or anything, but I've heard rumblings that he's on a very short-term deal at Vaughan and wants regular rugby,
I
and
mean,
it makes
y-
sense. It makes sense out of the four.
yeah, I mean, I'd be very happy though. Like, our scrum half stocks have depleted massively over the last couple of seasons. You know, Hardy, I'm not so much bothered with. I know I've met him a few times. He's a great guy and all that, but Dane Blackett is the one that I'm really regretting at the minute. And with Cowdor, I don't know if is he retiring, but he's definitely leaving the Scarlet at the end of the year. We're down to Archie Howes, who's yet to really have a good run of games. Evan Jones, who obviously isn't trusted. So yeah, we could do with bolstering that 9 position.
You mentioned Dane Blacker there, Matt. He hasn't been setting the world alight since he moved to the Dragons. I've been a little bit disappointed in Dane Blacker, I gotta be honest. I think there's been one or two performances where he's been good, but I think on the whole, he hasn't really worked out, and I could see him losing his place to either Shea Hope or Morgan Lloyd.
Yeah, well,
So
I think
see why he's
change of
left.
environments change you, innit?
No.
Sorry.
I can kind of see why both Cardiff and Scarlets have let him go now. Like, I couldn't see when we first let him go to the Scarlets. So it sort of made sense with Jamie Hill and Ellis Bevan coming through. But then, whenever he was played for the Scarlets, he looked right, and then he got let go. And I said, the more I've seen him, I think especially because of the contrast between him and Rodri. And Rodri's just doing so well to keep the Dragons in games with his management. I feel like Dane Blackett is probably not that first game against the Ospreys. You almost want to have Rodri on the bench and just let Dane Blackett make his mistakes in the first 30 minutes or whatever, and then bring Rodri on.
There's a big drop off. Whenever Rodri goes off and Dane comes on, there is a bit of a drop off. I mean, I like Dane Blacker, but he's not really had the impact I thought he'd have, I'll be honest. But go on.
Yeah, it's the same with every player when you change environments. I mean, you look at the sort of player Scott Williams was and how he ended up with the Ospreys, and then the same with the one that came the other way. It's another South Sea Islander. I can't remember his
Kieran
name.
Fonatia.
Yeah, he
Excellent
was so much better for the Ospreys than he was for the Scarlets. The environment, the game plan, everything plays effect for that. And Blackett probably hasn't been the same since he was in that Wales setup.
Yeah, I want to see him kick on, to be honest. But
yeah.
Okay, then anything else before we are going to have to talk about it at some point what happened on Sunday, unfortunately. So anything else? No.
Nothing that I heard.
Okay, excellent. Right. Let's get into it then. So Wales 19, Fiji 24. 10 successive defeats now, which means Wales still haven't won a competitive game of rugby in 2024. And it's now over 400 days since Wales last won a test match. Yeah, it's getting grim now, isn't it? It's getting really grim. We don't know how to win, it looks like. Do you remember a few years ago when Warren Gatland said we don't know how to lose? Now it's flipped. It's like we don't know how to win. How times have changed. Who wants to take this one first then? What went wrong for Wales?
I think a couple of things went wrong. First of all, I think there were just quite a lot of individual errors or decisions that we didn't quite make right. So you've got Thomas going for the quick tap and no one really being on his wavelength to go for that. Similar with Will Rowland's pick and go. One thing I think is we gave up after that. I feel like we got spooked after that driving maul penalty. I feel like they sort of shied away from it because they didn't want to be caught with the shift drive again. And I mean, ultimately, one thing that we outscored Fiji, but Fiji were taking the points. If they were 3-0, they took them. Yeah. And I think ultimately that's where we fell down. Was we weren't brave. We didn't think, let's just take the points. Let's just keep the scoreboard ticking over. And in bit different. It's like some of the best Gatland performances. Like say if we go back to the World Cup against Australia, it was just like right 3-0, right over. And just keep putting that pressure. By not taking those points, I feel like we just invited Fiji to come back at us, and in the end, they took the lead and they were very good for it. And that's one thing I'd also say is Fiji were very, very good as well.
Yeah,
But
we,
I
we
think
got to pay tribute to Fiji, and we can bemoan Wales's faults and we can pick the holes out of Wales's performance, but we really should give credit to Fiji because they deserved that, didn't they? They really wanted that win and they deserved it. I thought they were really, really good, especially in that second half. Their discipline is still honking, mind, and that's always been their problem. No matter how talented they are, their discipline is really, really honking. But that 20-minute red card law seemed to work out okay for them, didn't they? They'll suit them probably.
I'm not sure even if they were down to 14, it would have helped us that much. Because I just think they play like they've got about 26 on the pitch anyway.
One thing we can always say about Fiji, they do play heads up rugby, and that really killed us, especially months to score early. Well, early in the game, it was in the first half, And something I find quite funny about that is I've tried to look at some stats for the game, and Cam Winnett's attempt on Muntz hasn't been recorded as an attempted tackle. So I found that
he apparently has made
no
attempted tackle, so that whoever's code on rugby pass just did not even want to question it. Want to go for that.
To be fair, that's the sort of thing you see. People, new players joining the game, or in the early setups of contact. They have both arms up, flailing hands. So I think he'd be pretty happy if say, "Oh, I didn't attempt a tackle in that game." But yeah, Fiji were absolutely outstanding. They played the way I'd like us to at least try and play again, with a bit of flair, play what's in front of you more. I mean, I saw your instant reaction, Harley, and I thought Ben Thomas was rather average. I mean, he losing possession quite a few times. It seems as though the ball didn't get past him, but when it did, we looked okay.
You got to accept, like, a couple of those drops were horrific hospital passes as well. But I think when it's just, for me, it was just when me being positive with it, my instant reaction was more, I can see where this partnership's going. I can see promise. I can see it getting better. Certainly wasn't the finished article, but I can see what's trying to be done. But there were a few mistakes. I said I think a lot of players made mistakes. Again, going back to the Caleb Muntz try, the guards not coming up, not coming up and closing that gap. So it was just a massive space. Like, I play an incredibly shit level of rugby, and I get drilled. We get bollocked for leaving gaps like that. No one really took that.
Like, there's not many of those backs that came out of the game with this stock improved at all. Max Llewellyn is one. I mean, I think Blade did all right. I don't know if his stock has improved that much, but everyone else, they probably want to forget about this game as fast as they can.
So I was going to ask about Blaine Murray then. So I thought he had a pretty good debut. There was that one missed tackle, which led to that try. But I mean, overall, I thought he looked dangerous with ball in hand. So
especially since we had to keep switching between wings as well, because of I'm sure we'll get onto it, the cock-up with Costello being put onto the wing.
We'll come on to that. Yeah, absolutely. So so Blaine Murray then, Marty, what would you rate his performance 10 out of 10 if you're going to do a player rating?
I'd being generous, I'd give him a 7, and this is just watching every game he's played so far for the Scarlets. I know international is different, but when you see what a player can do and you want him to replicate that at another level, it disheartens you when you don't see that happen. His try was a gimme. Like quite a majority of players will be able to finish that off as long as they got a little
lovely pass from Ben Thomas. I gotta say that was a lovely pass in the build-up with Ben Thomas. He should get a lot of credit for that in the build-up.
Yeah. And same goes to Winnett for actually making that final pass, because I've been critical of Winnett, especially attacking wise. I know there was a few instances in this game where he probably should have given the ball rather than taking the contact, but he did get, I think he got 2 try assists in this, so fair play to the lad. Yeah, Blair was quiet compared to what we used to see in, but obviously it's a different game plan. You're going to see differences. But yeah, solid enough. Nothing spectacular. Enough to keep the shirt. That's probably my only view on it.
Okay. I thought he looked small because I've watched him, in all the Scarlets games, but in this game, next to the Fijians, I thought he looked really small. How tall is he?
You've got to compare it to. Remember, we're talking about Fijian backs here.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Who'd be forwards in most other teams. So
Yeah.
Give him that. And I don't think he was necessarily overpowered by it. Certainly no more than any of the other backs,
No, he
including
wasn't
players who have
overpowered.
played against Fiji.
He did look
Um,
small,
you know.
though, I thought.
Yeah, he's
But I
5
mean,
foot
like
8,
Chesington.
He's 5'8". Okay.
so he's going to look small.
Yeah.
He's not even going to look tall among scrum halves.
Certainly not against our scrum halves.
Yeah, no, yeah, he is a smaller winger. He is minute, but he makes up for that in his pace and his footwork, which is something we've certainly seen down west, and it's something that we're hoping to see translate onto the bigger stage. But yeah, he might be lacking in height, but physically he's a brick shit house. He is built. Fair play to the lad. He is bursting at the seams of muscle.
Yeah, I thought it was a very promising debut. Right, James, let's come to you then. So the first 20 minutes, I thought it was a positive start by Wales. We were doing good things with ball in hand. Our defence looked solid. It did seem to go tits up after Mason Grady left the field to be replaced by Sam Costello. Now, we'll talk about that now, I think, because that was a cock-up, as we know. But what was your reaction, James, from that moment in? I mean, it did... Well, Wales just lost all attack and shape, really, when that happened, didn't it?
I don't like reading the stats, but I think the stats do tell a story about from that 20-minute mark onwards. So in particular, you've got, your layman stats is Wales conceded around 11. I think it's up between 11 and 13 penalties has been recorded, right? But 5 of them were on attack. So that's 5 attacks that are thwarted, already. And some of them were really promising positions. I know Harley hates isolated missed tackle stats, but we missed 32 tackles, right? So about an 84% tackle completion, which will get you by at club level. Like you can win games with 84% at club level. You can't win games at international level with 84%. You got to be above.
Box are regularly below that, but okay.
But this is my next stat: is post contact meters, right? Fiji's post contact meters are around 384, so nearly 400 meters post contact. Wales is just 260.
Okay.
And again, to put that into
we're not physical enough.
They make an extra meter a carry than we do.
Yeah, essentially.
The number of carries as well.
Yeah, but with post contact, you've got to take that into perspective as well. Because if you get someone who is, shrugs off a tackle, on the 22 meter and runs 50 meters, that's 50 meters post contact.
But they're doing that more than we are. How many line breaks do you remember Wales actually physically making? There was 3. 2 of them, I think 2 of them were Blair Murray.
And one was Ellis Bevan.
And one was Ellis Bevan.
Who was on the pitch for about 5 minutes.
What I'm saying, Wales aren't getting over the gain line enough. So, and then you take into account, we've gone with a 6-2, right? So we've rolled the dice. Right, and not only have we gone with a 6-2, we've gone with a scrum half and a 10, right? Who can maybe play 15 at a push, right? I mean at a push, right? So immediately, if one of your wingers goes down, you are fucked, right? You are beyond fucked, and lo and behold, it happens, right? And then you have the cock up. I think what I will say is, right, Gatland's post-match comments is something completely separate, right? He's thrown Sam Costello under the bus in my eyes, and as someone who can be quite critical on Sam Costello, I don't think I think he actually did well with what he was dealt, right? When he was on at 10 in the second half, I thought he had some good touches. Well, who this falls on, I'm not seeing it said enough, is Nugget, right? This falls on Martin Williams because it's Martin Williams' job to fill in the card or the forms that go to the 4th official to make substitutions. So whether that's he's misheard what Gatland said, or from whoever it's come down from, Alex King, Mike Forshaw, Rob Howley, right? He has submitted the wrong player to go on. At test level, that is unacceptable.
Let me just come in there, because this is what Gatland actually said, right? He said, Ellis was supposed to go on. I need to get to the bottom of that. We were talking and said, we're going to put Ellis on. And then Sam's run onto the field. I think he might have assumed he was the person going on. We had already had those discussions with Ellis that if we do lose a winger, you're going to need to cover us there. I do not believe for 1 minute Sam Costello took it upon himself to just run on the field like that.
No, you can't.
There's been
He's not
a huge
allowed.
communication error. So I'm calling BS on that from Gatland. The other thing I would say, this should not happen in an international test match. This is amateur hour. This is the kind of thing you might see in WRU Division 6 East, but not in an international test match. It's a terrible, terrible error. And the optics are really bad. I just think it sums up the chaos of Welsh rugby at the minute. And for Gatland to sort of inadvertently put the blame on Sam Costello, I think it's wrong. I really do think it's wrong. It's a big howler, and someone's got to pay the price for that.
Is it if I chuck my tinfoil hat on in a second?
Go on
then. So one they did Lauren Jenkins put out on Scrum 5 that Sam Costello was actually just gesturing towards the bench trying to work out why am I going on? Because actually the logical thing is Costello's going on, Anscombe goes to the fullback and win it to the wing. But that's by the by. I think Gatland's done this on purpose to try and kill any notions of doing 6-2s, because I don't think he likes them like a lot of Kiwis. Because why else would he, like, if for a supposed smart coach, he's seen what works for 6-2s, he should know that you need an outside back in that thing, particularly if you've got two players who play 10 already on the pitch. All right, yes, you're a bit screwed if you lose both 10s, but that can happen in a regular game if you have a starting 10 and a bench 10. They can both go off injured. Same as like with 2 9s, 2 hookers. It's weird, but it can happen. I generally think he's done that on purpose, just to try and have just a narrative thing, and then it's something else to talk about. Not talking about things like, we're going about contact meters. So you've got Adam Beard, Tane Plumtree, Nicky Smith, Gareth Thomas, Kieran Azarati, all like forwards. None of them are making post contact meters. Now you can talk about their roles in attack, whatever, but like if they're making 7 8 carries and they're not making any one or fewer meters, something's going wrong there. If rucks are constantly being under resourced and we're getting blasted, that's something we should be talking about, not about the bench. Like, we've gone for a 6-2 to have extra physicality in the pack, and we're not seeing it.
The only person who brought physicality was Jack Morgan. If you look at his stats relative to contact meters, he's made the most meters per carry, and he only made 3 carries.
Of the pack.
Of the pack, yeah. That's what we're referring to.
Yeah.
He's the only person
Dewey's like 1 1/3. Aaron Wainwright's about 2 meters a carry. Yeah, well, no, it's exactly 2 meters a carry. It's 22 meters for 11. Weirdly for Plumtree, I think that's just more because of what the Gatland 6 role, because he normally makes more meters than that. But it feels like he was being used at the guts like a 6, which is where I was saying last week. I would have Wainwright playing the 6 role and Plumtree out wider. But
I think this is where the actual balance of the back row has failed Plumtree. Like, he didn't have a great game.
He looked better when both of them came on.
Yeah. Like, he was very average in his game. Like, I know he made a hell of a lot of tackles. He was a line-out caller, so we done pretty well on that front.
He wasn't the line-out caller. Adam Beard's the line-out caller. He just took line-outs.
He only took 5. I saw him.
That doesn't mean he's not calling it. Adam Beard is the squad's line-out caller. If you call it, you don't necessarily call to yourself.
I know Dav Jenkins does a lot, but that's more experience.
Adam Beard just makes the decision of who to call, who to throw to.
Just saw a lot of communication through Plumtree, so maybe that's my assumption there.
Yeah,
but he even
wasn't he jumping at 2? So maybe that's just a.
I thought Plumtree was jumping at 3.
Was it?
Yeah.
So I'd have to look through it.
But Plumtree, his whole game was changed by having Revel start, and that's massively affected his effectiveness essentially. When he has to do that up the guts, take things forward physically, it's not his strong suit. Yeah, he can do it at club level, not as effective at international as we can plainly see from this game. Change that balance in the back row like we saw when Morgan and both of them are both on the pitch. I know he can be more effective. He is that flashy, athletic back rower. That's what he does best. And if you're not going to use him that way, there's no point in using him at all.
No, I get your point. The thing with Plumtree is this, right? I really like Tane Plumtree. He's been excellent form for the Scarlets. Deserves his place in the Wales squad. I still got doubts about him being a top-end international player because I couldn't fault the effort on Sunday. He worked hard. He did make a lot of tackles. He was our top tackler, wasn't he? But he also missed a lot of tackles as well.
It's the most, yeah.
In percentage
He
is
gave
very
away,
nice.
yeah, he gave away a few soft penalties, but also was all clumsy, crashing into Thomas Williams like that. It's just a bit daft, really. So I think he needs to be a bit more intelligent at this level, I think.
The one that's, for me, not egregious is the wrong word, but is most telling is the way he shoots out the line for the Munch try.
Mm.
Like, I get wanting to hit on the game, hitting behind the game line, especially a 10 like that. You want to hit him behind the game line before he has a chance to do what he did. But he just got he planted his feet. He was too over exuberant, right? I really think Plumtree has all the raw physical attributes to be a test level back rower, wherever
There's a
he
player
lies.
there, isn't it?
There's
It's a
absolute
definite
player there.
player. Yeah.
But for me, right now, his rugby intelligence at this level needs to improve. I just don't think he's making the right decisions. I think he's got the right intentions, but he's not making the right decisions. We know what the work he gets through. He adds to the lineup. We've now got a third lineout option, right? Which when we lost Justin Tipperick was a big thing because Justin Tipperick was that third lineout option, and he makes tackles, right? Outside, he's such a hard worker, but it really stood out on Sunday. I just think his decision making leaves a lot to be desired. But I do genuinely think there's a really, really good player in there.
And remember, he is only 23, so he's gonna build that experience.
Yeah.
I think you've got to remember he's quite fresh. He sort of got plucked almost literally off a plane into the Wales setup before the World Cup.
No, I fully agree with you. And look, I don't like giving credit to Scarlet's players. We all know this, right? But I do genuinely think there's a player in there. But I think Martin's right as well. The balance of the back row. I'm not. This is not. Everyone thinks I got a lot of flack in the week, right, for saying Tommy Raffel being picked up with Jack Morgan is a mental decision, right? I was proved right massively. I'm not talking about the red card. I'm talking about where was Tommy. Point to me a moment where Tommy Raffel was effective in that game, bar one turnover. Where was his point of difference? Right? Where was it? Because I can't find. There was nothing on a carry. He defended. His defensive stats are average, like everyone else. Right? He makes tackles like a 7 should. Where's his point of difference? He did. There wasn't one. And then when Jack Morgan comes on, he makes that unbelievable. I know they scored the next phase, right? But he makes an unbelievable try-saving tackle in the corner. His work rate is better. All you lose is a jackal threat, right?
Yeah, and even then, Jack Morgan isn't.
No, he's never been a jackal.
He's probably not as. He's maybe not be like the 10 out of 10 jackal threat, as we discussed last week on the podcast. He may not be a 10 out of 10 jackal threat, but he is probably an 8 out of 10, and he's 8 9s on everything else. So actually, as an overall rugby player, better. And you've got other players who can compensate for that, like Dewi Lake's decent over the ball if he's got an option.
Yeah, Nicky Smith,
players like Chris Jones have had it.
Yeah.
This is the reason why I wanted Revel on the bench when we were talking about the squad last week. Is that threat from the starting point is not quite there. Tyron bodies, he's a lot more effective. You've got to use, like same with Plumtree, you've got to use them where they're going to be most effective. And you failed in that this week.
No, that's fair enough. We'll talk about the Australia game a bit later, but I do think that Jack Morgan was putting a very good claim to start that game ahead of Raffel. I really do. I thought he was excellent off the bench. That carry that led to Evis Bevan's try, that was superb. I thought he was terrific, Jack Morgan.
It was exactly the sort of thing we'd been missing, sort of thing. So
no, absolutely. 6-2 split. So we all agree that was a disaster. I had my doubts about it. When was the last time Wales had a 6-2 split in the Gatland? Does anyone know? Because it's not the first time.
Was it
Uruguay in the World
Uruguay
Cup
game in 2019?
Correct.
And
2 scrum halves.
And that was more just. But he was also the first male coach to put out a 7-1, even during the Lions tour. I say male because Canada did it. Canada have done it a couple of times as well in the women's game.
But yeah, it's not the first time Gatland has employed a 6-2 split. But yeah, that was a disaster. 20-minute red cards. Do we like them or not?
Go away.
I'm opening the floor for debate now.
There is no debate. Get rid of them.
Yeah, no, it was rubbish. You look at me and tell me Semi Radradra deserved someone to come on for him after that shot, right? Same with Tommy Raffel. I think Tommy Raffel should have read.
But that's the
Right.
wrong question, isn't it? Should he have seen red? Because I thought Rafael should definitely have
Yeah.
seen red for his
But
challenge.
both players, right? If we're properly red carded, does that World Rugby's thinking, right, is red cards detract from spectator experience, right? I can't think, apart from a game that would likely be a blowout anyway, of a game that has been ruined by a red card, right? I cannot think of one. And Lauren Jenkins made this point. A couple of others have made this point. Is and then for Gatland to come out and say, "Oh, I actually really support it." You might have won if they were down to 14. You cement-headed. No, I can't say
Steady
it.
on now, steady on.
I mean, we could have like asked why on earth this 20-minute red card is not done to death, and it's because a couple of unions in the Southern Hemisphere just do not want to tackle lower because they're too scared of rugby league. And it's as simple as that. So they want to keep the high shots in. Remember, like, if Tommy Rafael had been red carded, this would have ruined a near just over 6-year streak of Wales not having a red card, because as soon as that clampdown came in, they went, right, let's get the tackle like lower. South Africa are probably one of the most physical, dominant teams in defence out there. How often do they actually go all that high and will get red carded? It's, it happens, but it's an incredibly rare occurrence. So I don't get this argument where, you've got to do it for the physicality. It's just because they just don't want to tackle lower. Other teams are learning it. I mean, if you look at Owen Farrell when he got his red card before the World Cup, because he was forever doing his shoulder, the moment he got actually punished for it, he had to change his tackle technique and he started wrapping. He started, yes, he was a little bit less effective, but he changed. And by going for all these mitigations constantly, going for 20-minute red cards, we're not changing the behavior, which, remember, is to try and stop, having more cases of Steve Thompson, who can't remember his children's name when he wakes up in the morning sometimes. And you've got, this is what it's about. It's about protecting this really stupid bit of squishy stuff in the skull so that it works properly up into your later age. Like, yes, rugby is a physical sport. Yes, you'll get points where, you can't sit down without making a noise. But, like, that's annoying and it can be a bit of a pain, but it's not forgetting who you are as a person. It's not completely changing. I did a podcast with Alex Popham, and he was having, even during that podcast, he was spacing out because the mind just stopped saying, because of concussions. It's why he's such a big advocate about it. This 20-minute red card is just saying we're okay with that because we want to spectate. We don't want to ruin the spectacle of the game. I'm frankly sick to fucking death of trying to justify why a red card should remain a red card.
Like,
Red cards
one
do
thing
not ruin games. That's the myth that needs to be debunked. Red cards do not ruin games. Sorry, Matt, go on.
Yeah, something I read was that the 20-minute red card was only going to be for, for technical fouls or for, second yellows, not for, basically what we saw on the weekend. Any foul play wasn't supposed to be considered for a 20-minute red card. So even that's a step too far. And again, with this tackling, something I dislike, especially here in Wales, is we're expecting amateurs to tackle below the midline of the chest, but professionals who are at this dozens of hours a week, we can't ask them to do that. They don't have the time, or whatever excuse they come up with. There's no reason why they can't lower the height.
No, quite right. So we had a centre partnership of Ben Thomas and Max Llewellyn. Ali, I'm going to come to you now. How do you think they went? Did it work, that partnership, for you?
I think it did. Yes, there were issues, and Mark did point out Ben Thomas did drop a fair few balls, but I thought it worked well. You had Matt Sloan bringing some actual impact and some carrying from the midfield, which is something we've been lacking, even when we tried to put Grady in at 12. It gave us something. Ben Thomas's distribution was, for the most part, I thought, really good. Yes, he made a couple of back-to-back errors, missed a tackle on Tuasova, which, no shame, very few people make one-on-one tackles with Josh Tuasova. That's why he is so notorious for it. And then he kicks out. I mean, all right, you'd hope he'd park that emotion and not kick it out on the full, but those things happen in a game. I think he looked a lot better playing in at 12 than he did at 10. Funny enough, where he plays at club. who knew Jockey knows what he's on about. And yeah, I think Max Llewellyn was just adding some impetus into that game and some power, which is great. I do agree when Grady came off, I think losing that double carrying threat really stifled us, because I feel like it got to a point then where Fiji knew they just had to keep an eye on Max Llewellyn. You know, that Blair Murray try. I think the thing that makes it, yes, it's a lovely pass from Ben Thomas, but he's just lifting it ever so slightly for Grady coming in late, running a hard line. And then he takes the ball, and you can see it draws a Fijian defender, and that's what gives you enough space for Winnett to give Blair Murray what all wingers really, if the attacking system is working well, all wingers should have walking tries. Really, if you want, if your attacking system, because you've drawn in all the defenders. So I think it's definitely one I think we need to stick with for a few weeks. Let's just see what happens. That being said, I would like to bring one. I would like, when we go on to talk about changes for Oz, I would like to see Eddie James maybe coming in off the bench. Whether or not he's necessarily a bench player, I know Mark is saying no, but I think you've got to give them another go, because if we're constantly chopping and changing, we're never going to get anything to establish.
No, quite right. I don't think we'd be seeing a 6-2 bench split again, will we, for Australia? James, let me come to you then. Thomas Williams, Gareth Anscombe, halfbacks. How do you think they did?
Poor.
Paul?
Poor.
Why?
No, all week the impetus wasn't on they were going to play the Gloucester way, right? There was that maybe interest that they might bring that Gloucester way of playing, especially with Llewellyn at 13. But what we wanted as fans was, right, 2 senior halfbacks to give us control. Right? They, for me, did not control the game. Harley goes on about Thomas Williams doing that tap penalty about 56 minutes, right? There, if you just wait, right, you have a kickable penalty and you also have a kick to the corner where we know our maul's going well, right? That kick puts us in the lead. Potential of I know we're going into butterfly effect here now, and I can't think of what did Gareth Anscombe do in that game that made me say, yeah, we're controlling the game really well here, because then Caleb Muntz and Frank Lamani did. And the fact that I'm saying Frank Lamani controlled a game, it really shows how fucking far we've fallen, right? Because he was useless at Northampton, but Caleb Muntz, we know now, this is a player who can go on and do great things. I fully expect him to see an English club like Bristol maybe spending the money on him, or a top French team. Do I think that they'll be dropped, Williams and Anscombe? No way. I don't think he's going to drop them at all.
No.
But for me, they didn't have the effectiveness that they were in. The intention was to bring them in to have.
No, that's fair enough. What about you, Matt? How do you feel?
I still think you were naive if you thought the Gloucester halfback pairing. Now, if you've seen Gloucester play, if you're thinking they're the guys bringing control, then there's something wrong.
No, but it's not control. But we know, Anscombe gets a lot of this creative 10, right, who can orchestrate a backline to play some lovely rugby. But I think he's also just a really smart rugby player. He kicks well, right? He's a good communicator. And having someone like Thomas, who's, a bit of a rabid puppy on a leash, who he can, unleash then. But, if you go to that first set of phases on the Fiji line, right? We went through nearly, I think, 17 phases or something like that, and then they turn us over. That falls on Williams and Anscombe for me, because Williams is telling the forwards to keep it in, right? When there's space. Anscombe's there. Anscombe, for me, there, in all his experience, should be saying, right, now is the time we pull the trigger. Now is the time we roll the dice. But instead, we kept it in the forwards, and then we get turned over. That's where the modicum of experience should come in for me. They were on 50 and was it 56 caps for Williams and however many it is for Anscombe, right? And, it's not a new pairing, but they for me, they just didn't have the effectiveness that I think everyone expected.
Okay, fair enough. Matt, I'll just come to you now then. Any other talking points in our Wales game with certain players who stood out to you for good or bad reasons?
I don't want to pick anyone out for bad reasons. Who does? Especially after a game like I'm really struggling, which is which is ascertains the problem. I thought Archie Griffin went a right, in play. Struggled a bit at scrum time. I think the whole pack had a bit of a mare, against this Fiji side, on that count. But yeah, I want to see changes, but my changes are more personal, more long term, more looking to the future. I'm not. I don't want to focus on winning this week because I'm very much an optimist, and anyone who's listened to the Scarlet Squad will know I'm an optimist. I will always try and think the best, even when I know I'm 100% wrong. But I can't pick out too many players that were. I don't think I picked many players I could say would above good who played better than a 7 out of 10, especially from the starting pack. I thought Roland didn't quite have the effect he normally does.
Yeah, he was disappointing, wasn't he, Roland? I thought he gave away a couple of penalties as well.
He looks
like someone. He looks like someone who hasn't played much rugby.
How much is he playing for Vassar though? Is he playing?
I don't think a huge amount. I think it's been a bit of a bit part player. What I've said, I'll be honest, I haven't been keeping too much up to date with top 14. I've sort of watched the odd Sunday game here and there. As well, I said, I don't think he gave. I think he gave away 2 penalties. Beer gave away 3, topping off things, and then lots of people gave away 1.
Rowlands has played 400 minutes this year. If you discount, just under, I think 350 if you take away Sunday.
Yeah, but that's about average for everyone, really, isn't it?
Yeah.
But how many games of the top 14 have there been?
Yeah, so he's started. Yeah, he started pretty much most games.
Okay.
I don't know if we've chatted about it already, but the decision to change the front row on 45 minutes.
You want to talk about this, don't you? Come on, get into it, James.
No, and it's not a slight on the play. I want to say it's not a slight on the players who came on, and this is why I think people took my tweet a bit the wrong way, that I was complaining that Elias was coming off a leg. I was more complaining that unless he's injured or completely shagged, which I don't think he was either, why are you taking Lake off at 45 minutes?
And he had a good game as well up in that point, didn't he? So it seemed a bit strange.
And just in 45 minutes, he's the Wales's top carrier. He's up there in tackles. I think he's second in tackles. You know what I mean? Like, he gets through so much work, and he galvanizes the team. He's squad captain for a reason. What that tells me is Gatland's like, oh well, we've got Jack Morgan on the bench, so that's fine. We can bring that on. And again, it's not on Elias. I thought Elias had, bar the knock on at the end, I thought Elias had a fine game. I think he did absolutely everything that was asked of him. But I question why you're changing we don't have a bomb squad, right? And Gwyn Jones made a reference to it on Welsh comms, and he went Cymru bomb squad or whatever. We don't have that, right? I love Nicky Smith, and Kieran Hazarati is a perfectly fine player. But that's not putting the shits up anyone. Seeing that front row come on, with all due respect to the 3 players, I question why do it on 45 minutes. Why not just change them at half time?
Well, that was one of the things that came up on the comms with moaning. I think Ugo was moaning about that. But I think for me as well, I feel like you want to do it to either up the gear. You want to up intensity or something. And it kind of felt on that 45-minute mark, it wasn't really. The game hadn't really swung either way. I mean, you might argue, if the scrum had creaked, we'd given away 1 penalty, which, I mean, Mark can tell us. Mark will give us.
It was Archie Griffin, who scrummed like a man who's only played, less than 100 minutes of rugby.
It was the sort of scrummaging I personally, without going into technicals, that's what I'd expect from a Premiership side's 3rd choice tight head going up against another Premiership side's 1st choice loose head.
Yeah.
Because remember, Aroni Maui is the 1st choice loose head for Saracens, and they may not be the most dominant scrum in the Premiership, but they're not exactly folding like a paper plane.
See, the bench thing was weird for me. That was it just struck me as, I don't get it, and it wasn't effective.
Yeah, I can agree with you on that front. It depends entirely on what you're trying to do. If you bring in Jack Morgan on at 45, then you're doing that because you want to increase that physicality. That's don't at the same time take away, the best, your best carrying forward on the pitch at the same time. I can 100% understand Archie Griffin coming off to an extent, Gareth Thomas, if you're looking to, change that type of game you're going for. Obviously, was it Reveley came off? Yeah, it was Reveley came off. So yeah, brings Nicky Smith on to keep us with a jackal threat there. But I love Elias. He's a great player, and I know people might not agree with that. So be it. But he has different attributes, and all these players have different attributes. Lake's point of difference, like you've already attributed to, with point of difference, is his carrying, is that physicality. You don't take that off in a game of this magnitude against a Fiji side on 45 minutes. You just don't. You play him till he's off his feet. It's as simple as that.
The thing that it most reminds me of, look at, and we'll come on to Australia, but look at the way the Australians use Angus Bell, right? Is he stays on for 65, 70 minutes because his point of difference is his carrying. He beat 9 defenders on the weekend, right? Which is now I think the international record for a prop, right? And he beat Thomas Gaggio for the record, who held it twice. But so that's Angus Bell's point of difference, and Joe Schmidt knows that he's only going to bring on James Slipper when Angus Bell is completely fucked. That's what we need to be doing with Lake.
Well, I mean, he does say, they do it with Tupou as well. He is absolute magic, but he can't do 100 minutes. He can't do 80 minutes. So they bring on Alan Alatoa.
But this is the thing with Lake as well. Now, he's been around forever, but he's only had 9 starts. He's still a very young international.
Yeah.
He needs those minutes. He needs to be on that pitch. I know he's had some impressive, appearances at this level, but he's still not in that sort of, that person who's he's 100% going to be the first choice on that team sheet. He's still not in the category. I can see games where he would want to pick Elias, where if Elliot D was there, I see games where he'd want to pick Elliot D. He's still got a bit of development to go, and that's only good for us because he's going to get better.
Yeah, but you've got to have that faith in him. You've got to say to him, Dewi, you're the future, you're the captain. And he's if you sit down, listen, I think if you listen to the Scrum 5 interview in the week and you read the interviews he's done, you can see why he's captain. You can see why he was brought in as an apprentice. You can see why Osprey spent so much money on him. Converting him from a back row, spending thousands and thousands of pounds on a throw-in coach, right? You can see why, but to me, that's not screaming, I have full confidence in you, taking him off at 45 minutes. No. That's the frustrating thing. It's like if Archie Hughes at Scarlets now is having a great game and Dwayne Peel turns around at 50 minutes for no reason and says, right, I'm going to bring Gareth Davis on. What does that, what is that telling you? What are you learning from that? What's that doing for Archie as a player? That's what we need to be doing for our young players. Dewi Lake was he 23, 25? He's 25, right? He's coming into his prime, right? These next 3 years are going to be huge for him, right? 25 to 28, and then he moves into the Elias role, right? What Elias is now. It just baffles me, and it seriously baffles me.
Okay. Jamie Roberts was doing punditry on S4C. He's come out firing. He spoke about Warren Gatland. He says, Gatland says they're growing as a group. I have to disagree, to be honest. Losing 10 on the bounce, that's the worst Wales have been in the professional era. I understand the spin Warren is trying to give, but sorry, I don't think Wales will move forward. Maybe some elements of the game, but you can't see Wales growing. Is he right? Can any of you see Wales growing?
Yeah. But I feel like he's been doing a lot. I think he's been doing a lot of things about half the speed he should be. And things like I said, think of like with the centre partnership. Instead of dicking about with lots of players in the wrong positions, trying to fit square pegs into round holes, and then go through. I don't think he necessarily stuck with players when maybe he should have. And I think he's sticking with some players for longer than he needs to. But then that's built up on previous regime getting put under a lot of pressure. So they were trying to basically flog the last out of certain players. So Pivot wasn't allowed to, wasn't afforded this long losing streak where he could just say, might not get wins, but I'm going to develop depth in lots of positions. He had to constantly throw people out as quickly as he's bringing them in because he basically had to find something that worked. And he basically have a game to do it.
Yeah, very interesting comments from Roberts, though, who, by the way, is on the WRU board. as a non-executive director. So I find that pretty
Be nice for him
interesting.
to come out about talking about the WRU and how they've treated the women recently.
You would, yeah, absolutely. What about the rest of you? Do you agree with Jamie Roberts? Could you see growth in this group or not, as Roberts believes?
What's it, like?
The only
Growth is relative, right? What is his benchmark? What is it from when Gatlin took over? Are we? Is it from growing from there? Is it growing from the last World Cup? Is it growing from the last Six Nations? It's like success, right? How do you measure success? Do you measure in tangible things that you can hold, like medals and trophies, or do you measure in squad progress and winning games and things like that? I agree with Roberts. I think that I just can't see the growth. It's one step forward, two steps back. For every good thing that we do, we then go and mess it up. Things like we have really good young players, especially we've got I think quite good depth at lock in Wales, right? And then he goes and calls up Corey Hill and makes him captain in the summer in Australia. Things like that have a real knock-on effect on growth and perception of growth from the rugby public as well.
Yeah. I mean, the only growth I'm seeing is in individual players. I'm not seeing any growth as a team. Anything positive, I'll be honest, it's looking more like the players trying things off their own backs. It doesn't look like anything that's structured. It just isn't working. Like we spoke last week, I don't rate Gatland as a coach. Yes, you talk about him being a manager, but if you've ever listened whenever we've gone onto the subject over on the Scarlet Pod, I think yes, obviously he was successful in his first period, but I think he was really he underperformed. We should have picked up a few more Six Nations titles with that squad. We should have had wins out in South Africa, Australia,
without
and New
player
Zealand.
pool and no resources, you think he should have done better? I'm not so sure.
Yeah. With what he had, we should have been much, much better.
Okay, that's interesting. Mike Phillips had come out swinging tonight, doesn't he, on social media?
I was going to say, is this just going to be a list of all the former Gatland players who are having a swing? Because Dan Bigger also had a pop off in him on TNT's coverage.
Yeah, but this is quite funny, actually. So Mike Phillips quote tweeted an interview that he did on the TNT one Gatland. He said, loads of positives, yeah? You want 600k a year and you don't even have to win. How the WRU bring this guy back is just nuts. Laughing all the way to the bank. And then he followed it up with, when I see this guy talking about family, it makes me cringe. Did he speak to me at the end of my career? Did he? Fuck. He didn't actually say fuck, he just put F. I won for this guy. This bloke is only out for himself, and it kills me to see all the bullshit praise he's getting. He deserves to be kicked out like he did to so many quality Welsh players. Get off the fence, Mike.
Not bitter about not getting 100th capital there. I mean, I'm not saying he doesn't have points, but it's definitely a bitterness that he didn't get his 100th cap.
James, any thoughts on Mike Phillips's comments?
Look, it's like it wouldn't be a Wales campaign without Mike Phillips saying something, and all it's done is Irish rugby Twitter is on the fence because they hate the only people who hate Mike Phillips more than is the Irish, but then they're like, oh, I agree with him. So that anything that confuses and pisses off that lot, then he's good in my books.
Yeah, good old Mike Phillips. So look, Gatland is under a lot of pressure, as we know. He's been blaming the media for creating a narrative. I think that's a cop-out. I think if you lose 10 games on the bounce, you create your own narrative. Sorry, Warren. That's a fact. But here's the thing, and we've all seen comments on social media, right? The WRU are not going to sack Warren Gatland now. Right? They haven't got the money to do it. We all know that, don't we? They're not going to sack him. Even if he goes winless in this campaign, they're not going to sack him. The question should really be
contract, because it supposedly has cool-off clauses. So, like after X number of years,
but do we know that for certain though? Because according to the news this evening on BBC Wales Today, they were saying the WRU don't have any appetite to sack Gatland. So
it's because they don't have to find a new coach.
Yeah, but the question really shouldn't be should the WRU sack Gatland, because I don't think they will, and I don't think they can afford to at this moment in time. The question should be, if Wales do go winless in 2024, which is perfectly possible, let's be honest, we got Australia up next, and then we got South Africa. Should Warren Gatland hand in his resignation? That's the question, really, because he's done it once, remember, against Italy, apparently, and Abby Tierney turned round and allegedly said, hell no, why would we want to do that? It'd be quite interesting if he does it again, will that be Abby Tierney's same response? But if we go winless in 2024, that makes his position untenable. Should he hand in his notice? Any of you? What do you think?
I mean, the big part of me is I'm not sure what could do because I don't know who'd replace him, because it's not like there's a decent quality international coach and coaching team. And remember, it's a team, because you've got to remember there are a couple of coaches there who were under the pivot days, and this, they've still got jobs and there's still similar problems. We've brought Howley back and that attack hasn't improved. We brought Alex, Alex King got brought in to bring in this different attack we've not seen. Mike Forshaw's defense is still on the fence, and yeah, to be honest, he probably should have gone after that Six Nations. But I don't see the improvements. I mean, let's be fair. I mean, it'd be quite nice for Gatlin to hand his resignation in, along with a lot of the others at the WRU for various other things and how they cocked up the game.
Yeah.
But it's not going to happen because they're all riding that gravy train together.
Yeah. What about you then, Matt? Do you think Gatlin should hand in his resignation if we go winless in 2024? I mean, most other coaches probably would, wouldn't they? A lot of unions would give their coaches the chop, but the WRU are in a very difficult position now, aren't they?
I mean, fact is, right now, he's now holding a joint record for having the most, losses in a Wales shirt. I wouldn't want to hold that on my own, and knowing who's in the next opposition. And yes, there is a possibility of Australia just having a massive flop and us coming out the way with a win. It's still unlikely. I wouldn't want that moniker on me. I would be giving it a now. I wouldn't be waiting another 2 weeks. I wouldn't want to be known as this is all he'd ever be known as. People wouldn't remember the golden years. They'd remember, oh yeah, he's the one that lost 11, 12, however many matches in a row for us. He's the one that went a calendar year without a win. So if I was him and I was thinking about myself, because realistically that's what he asked God to think about, I'd be going, yeah, I'm on it now. I'm not doing this.
Yeah, that's a fair point. What about you then, James? Because there are some people who believe that Warren Gatlin can turn this around. He's been in these situations before with Wales where they haven't been winning, and he's turned it round. That was then, this is now. Do you think he can turn it round?
I want to say yes, right? The optimist in me wants to say yes, but when are we going to see the fruits of the labor? When are what conceivably in between now and the end of Six Nations, where is our next win coming from? I don't think we'll be terrible against Australia. I think people are, writing a good group of players off way too early, right? Do I think we'll win is another question, right? We won't get anywhere near the box.
No.
You then go France away on your first game of the Six Nations. Like, you can't ask for a harder match, really, unless you went to Dublin. So where does the next win come from? Where especially at home, England and Ireland at home. Are we beating any of them at home? I don't think so at the minute.
I don't know. Australia proved Warren Ball works really well against England.
But
that's basically how they got through. But I don't think
the skill levels in Australia, that Australian team compared to us are night and day. I'm sorry. The way their 2 nines impacted the game. You look at Swahili, you look at
he was so good. So good, wasn't he? For his first game of rugby union, a hell of a debut.
Professional rugby. He did play up until he was like,
of course, 17. International. I mean, international.
Professional rugby union.
I mean, your first game of senior rugby is Twickenham away. Is in Twickenham. That's.
He was outstanding.
But, I mean, as you're talking about our next win, I generally think the only thing that will get us a win is if Italy don't. Basically, if Italy do what lots of other teams have done to them and not take us seriously, and if they think it's a game they don't need to try too hard for.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, I genuinely don't think we'll be able to beat them.
No. Okay. So before we move on to Australia, just a reminder that we are available on all the usual platforms, Apple, Spotify, and our YouTube channel, where we're aiming for 1,000 subscribers. So if you haven't already done so, please like, subscribe, help us grow the channel. We'd really appreciate that. And you can also leave us a nice review on Apple Podcasts because it all helps the algorithm. Right, so Australia next. A revived Wallabies team heading to Cardiff on the back of a famous win at Twickenham. Bit of team news from Australia. So it looks like Captain Harry Wilson's going to be out with concussion. We might see Will Skelton come in for this one. There's been a few talk in the Australian press about Will Skelton coming in. Yeah, so it doesn't get any easier for Will.
And Samuel Karevi, I think, as well, has been another one who supposedly, again, goodie.
Yeah, exactly. There's a bit of quality and depth there now, isn't there? Joe Schmidt doing a really good job. So how do we feel about this one then? Because I watched our England-Australia game. Australia really good. Fair play to them. However, maybe I'm a bit bonkers for saying this. I still fancy us, you know? I think this is a winnable game. I really do.
You've just
am
been
I on crack or am I on crack or what? Tell me. Honestly, I think it's a winnable game.
Yeah.
So I'll say what I was saying to Hugh after the game, and I basically my bottom line was I can see ways to get at this Australia team. I don't know if Wales are a team who can do it. So one of them is the fullback, always out of position. He spends more time hustling rucks than he does in the backfield when a team's getting ready to box kick. That's some space we can exploit. I don't know if we necessarily will be able to identify that. Their line-out isn't particularly great, but then I wouldn't say we're necessarily the best defensive line-out team either.
I think we're better than people give us credit for.
I think we're very good on the ground.
I think being the defensive line-out, good defensive line-out team isn't just about stealing. It's about putting pressure and slowing ball down.
As I said, I think when we're on the ground, I think, particularly that's where Adam Beardon's his match day fee is causing problems for any opposition more.
Mm-hmm.
But so these are some things, and they do like throwing it a while. They will play from absolutely anywhere. So in theory, you could pin them into the corner. But if you're going to pin them into corner, you've got to have the kicking game where that Thomas Williams 50-22 isn't a fluke. It's something we're able to pull off 9 times out of 10. We then got to have the defensive cohesion to stop them just breaking our line and getting through, which is something we do concede quite a few line breaks. And the fact that they're going to have Will Skelton, that's going to, if we were struggling with the physicality of Fiji, Will Skelton is something else. I know it doesn't always show it in the gold shirt, but he's going to take a few people to stop. So you need someone who's just going to be able to chop him down all day, or we're going to have a bad day.
Yeah. What about you there, Matt? Do you share my optimism that this is a winnable game, or am I on my own in this one? I tried to lift the mood on this pod because I feel like it's been a bit doom and gloom. Understandable with all the defeats in a row, but what do you think?
All right, then I'm going to join you. It's the most winnable of the 2 games we got left.
Yeah,
certainly
I
is.
honestly thought.
Yeah, like I just said just now, we don't know what Australia is going to turn up. We know that it can be a very flaky side, so there are opportunities here, and like Harley has already mentioned, there's a few areas of the game that are not quite up to speed. They can be exploited. The question is, can we step up to the task? Can we change our game plan? Can we pick the right team to do that? Which is, the main question. Can we pick a bench that can actually cover all the players on the pitch?
No, 6-2 split. We don't want to see another split.
We could do it with a 6-2 split. It was just that Gatton picked the wrong player.
Yeah.
For a 6-2 split. As I said, I think he actively wanted to try and get rid of 6-2 talk. Saying, look, it's terrible. It doesn't work. like my boss who's put solar panels on the north side of the building to say, look, solar panels, they don't work.
Wow.
Fair enough. James, Australia come to Cardiff on the back of a outstanding win at Twickenham. How are we feeling about it?
I think going by the mood of where I work, right, we should be shitting ourselves. I'm not feeling optimistic at all. I think what that win does for someone like Australia, right, which is essentially what we're waiting for, is we're waiting for that win. And it's not just a win, it's a statement. You're doing that to England in their own backyard. You're making them concede, however, was it 42 points or whatever, right? that's a statement. That's putting the Northern Hemisphere, the Lions next year, on notice that we're not going to roll over. I just think that they're individual, and I fully agree with you, boys, over all the points we can get at them. It's just like individually, there's so much there. Like I was just genuinely in awe of that Joseph, and I watch a lot of rugby league, right? But that Joseph Suaalii, just what he did, he was making Henry Slade look like that 18-year-old kid that's just been called up to the seniors. Len Ikitau, I think amazing. I think that back row is so good. Angus Bell, you know, if I was Dewi Lake and Gareth Thomas, right, I'd have photos of Angus Bell just stapled to my wall at all times because that's all you're going to be doing on Sundays, just tackling that man.
Mm.
Their threats over the park, they're a different threat to Fiji, right? I think they kick really well. I think they're so dangerous on transition. If we kick as loosely as we did against Fiji, we will be punished, but in a different way. Because I think they're dual threat. I think their 2-9s bring a tempo that Wales might struggle with. I think Jake Gordon I really like, and then Tate McDermott. Is that perfect 9 to come off the bench? He's almost like it's like letting loose a dog in a park. One of them really yappy ones that bites your ankles. That's what he is. So look, the romantic in me says, Wales in the autumn against Australia. It's always a humdinger. There's a lot riding on it. We can win. Of course we can win. I still have faith in this squad, right, that they can do well despite the management, despite the hand that they're being I read a comment that these players just don't deserve this level of incompetency from a whole organization, not just a coach. I remember, some of the players that we had when we had Alan Clark at the Ospreys, right? So these players don't deserve this. We don't deserve the incompetency that So, look, I think it'll be a much tougher challenge, but, anything can happen.
Yeah, quite right. Let's talk about selection then, because obviously we don't know what's happening at the moment with Mason Grady. We don't know the full extent of that ankle injury, but let's just say that he is out for this one. He probably will be, won't he? Rio Dyer comes in, or Tom Rogers. That's a position up for debate, isn't it? What changes? Let's come to you then, Mark. You talked about you want to see changes, didn't you? What changes would you make for this one then?
I'd make a fair few.
Or Scarlet's players, is it?
How many? Well, honestly, there's a few in there. Yeah, obviously. But
the one I took choosing Scarlet's players. Who'd have thought that?
It's the same as my view last week. If I'm going to pick a side, I'm going to pick a side I want to see, and this is a side that I think would, going forward is something we can work on.
Let's have it.
Do you want me to go through the whole thing, or do you want me to go through?
No, just say what changes. Go on then.
I reckon it's going to be Matthias, Elias, and Henry Tomer. Oh, sorry, no, it would be Griffin.
No, front row would be Matthias, Lake, and Azarati.
Is it because Lake went to a school in like Capel Dewi once? So
like I said, this is like I named my team last week because I thought that was a team that could get over the line against Fiji, with also having a little bit of a look towards the future as well. Now it's just a case of, and I want to pick a 23 that only injured players, will come into for the Six Nations. If Grady's out, only he could get in, and like only Joe Roberts would come into this 23. That sort of thing I'm looking for. Because I don't see the point in picking a squad now to try and beat Australia, because it's highly unlikely. I'd rather pick a side than I know is going to get used to each other this week, next week, and then come Six Nations, they've got a bit of connectivity with them. They know what they're doing. So Matthias, Lake, Azarati, all three players need game time at this level. They all need minutes. And if Azarati is to be an international 3, a starter, then, he needs own minutes. And Matthias is a baby, especially at this level. He's shown a lot. So that's my decision for there. No disrespect to Beard. I think Beard can be, like I said last week, he's brilliant at what he does. I don't think we can quite afford him at the minute.
What do you mean by that, Matt? They can't afford him. What do you mean?
He's not a physical second row. Like he doesn't carry as much grunt as others. He's more of a connective player. He's very good at the set piece, and no one can argue that.
Yeah,
You know,
that's his
especially
strength,
more
isn't it?
defense.
It's the more defense, the set piece work. That's what sets him apart from the other locks. He's never been that big ball carrying grunty lock, have he?
Yeah, and that's
And
what I
he was
think we
fourth for
need.
passes. Yeah,
Yeah.
against Fiji.
There we go.
You know,
That just shows
you
it
know,
all. So yeah, I'd be going Will Rowlands, and I want to give Teddy Williams a shot. I want to see how he can go about. Only Plumtree, Morgan, and Wainwright. I think most people would probably be along the same if they're looking at that balance. Like I said last week, I want to see Bevan and Costello together. I want to see how they can progress together. I think that's something that could be exciting going forward. Harley's not going to like my ear, but I still want to see Eddie James and Matt Llewellyn together.
Yeah.
And my back three, and people will think I'm weird for this, but I would go Murray, Rogers, and Winnett. Obviously, Rogers on the wing at Winnett. But if Grady was fit, Grady would be my bench option, and Hathaway would be starting. Rogers is only in there because Grady can't be in the 23. I prefer Hathaway, but I think he's a better impact off the bench.
Okay, interesting.
It's a weird one. Before we go on, I need to know the bench now because the way my brain's working now.
All right. Elias, Thomas.
Yeah.
Shunza both Thomas, Anscombe, and Hathaway.
Oh, yeah.
Well then, Ali,
Really
what
simple.
the placements do you make then?
So
this?
not necessarily. So this is based on the way Gatlin said that he's basically going to try and keep the same 23-4-3 games near enough. So it's going to be swapping. So for me, Morgan comes in for Reffel. One, because I think Reffel's probably going to get cited in a ban. Frankly, I think he should. I think we're all agreed that should have been a red card. Also, I think Jack Morgan just has far more about him. I think just we're talking about having beard and where his deficiency are in a pack than his carriers. Or let's get another one of our best carriers in there, and and actually get some go forward. I'm assuming Grady won't come through with his leg lock. So for me, Dyer comes in on experience more than anything else. So that's the other thing. I want to keep that said. I get the Eddie James, Maxwell, but for me, if you were going to go Eddie James, Maxwell, and it should have been week one and give them 3 solid games. So I want to see 3 games of Thomas Llewellyn before we worry about anything else. It's the same logic used last week. Just get people doing the same thing week in, week out, no changes. Bench wise, we know it's going to go back to a 5-3. So for me, I think I think it would be nice seeing Eddie James. I know he's not necessarily an impact player, but I think with the way the rest of the squad's set up, I got a feeling it's going to be Owen Watkin coming on, being that 23, just as Gavin always had. Just because I don't see another 13 cover necessarily for me.
Okay, fair enough.
But that's
James?
what I think Gatlin's going to do. It's not what I'd pick, but that's what
You
I
think that's Gatland, yeah. So James, what changes would you make then if he was in charge for this Australia game?
I think Jack Morgan comes in for sure. I think there's an argument to be made Henry Thomas starts for me, just to really give yourself the best chance scrum time. Really go after whichever Aussie loosehead starts, whether it be Bell or whether it be Slipper.
It will be Bell's slipping on the bench, I think.
Yeah, so you go after them at set piece. I think you keep the same second row. I think you give Rowlands a second chance to redeem himself. Like I said, I think you keep the back row. My only concern is Wainwright looks out in his feet.
He just doesn't look fit enough, does he?
Yeah,
He looks undercut. He's been out for a long time without injury, so
I think there is scope for. Right, I don't think this will happen. I think there's scope for, and there's an argument to be made. He brings both of them in at 6. Right, I personally I don't think it'll happen, but I think there's scope of he goes for both Morgan Wainwright back row, but then my argument would be is what value does playing Tame Plumtree bring off the bench? Does he provide the impact that you want coming off the bench? So there is scope for that, and you also lose an effective lineout option.
But Wainwright is an effective lineout option as well, to be fair.
But I think I think Plumtree is proven to be a better lineout operator than Wainwright. So I think you've got someone. I think he keeps the same halfbacks. I'd be tempted to bring in Eddie James. What you've got to look at is, right, who are they lining up against, right? It's Ikitau and Swahili, right? So with Swahili in particular, you've got to shut him down at source. You can't allow him, going off what happened on the weekend, you can't allow him to get his offloads off. You can't allow him to get his arms free to put his wingers and put his fullback into space. So there is an argument to be made that he does bring Watkin in as a defensive 13, because will Llewellyn do that? He might do. From an attacking point of view, I think there is scope to bring Eddie James in, that soft touches to really exploit the naiveness of a person who's only defending 13 at international at rugby union for the second time. I think Dyer for experience comes in on the wing. Obviously you go back to 5-3 on the bench. I think you can keep the same front row bench. You change, maybe you keep Azarati. I think Chris Chinza stays at 19. Your flanker stays the same. Bevan, Costello, and then I think you put Rogers in there for versatility.
Yeah.
I think that's the thing. I don't want to see too many changes, but I want to see the changes I want to see. I want to see them have the desired effect. So if you're going to bring Jack Morgan in, obviously he's going to have to bring the effect that you want. And if you bring Henry Thomas in, you have to see return on investment in it. So you have to see the dominance he's been showing at URC level, and the effectiveness at URC level. So you've got to get ROIs on whoever you bring in. So with Dyer, he's got, Mason Grady, I think in 18 minutes had a really big impact on the game, right? They were bringing him, really bringing him on. So with Dyer, if he comes in, I'm not saying he has to go on barnstorming, hitting the gain line like Grady does, but you have to see an ROI and see him getting into space and scoring tries.
Yeah, but there is an argument for Tom Rogers to start. He is in better form than Rio Dyer. So it'd be interesting to see if Grady is out too, Gatlin goes with. I think you probably go with Dyer for the experience, though, only, I would imagine. But all remains to be seen. Okay, then let's give our prediction, shall we? Come on then, Martin, what you're saying. Who's going to win on Sunday? Are we finally going to win a game in 2024?
Yeah, why not? Why not? Wales by 1.
Wales by 1. Harley?
Quite all my optimism. I think it's going to be messy. I think Oz by 12.
Oh, wow. It's not very positive.
I know, and that was the positive one in the Fiji game.
James, how do you see this going? Are we finally going to get this elusive win?
My heart says yes. My head says no. My head says Australia by 6.
Okay.
And you, Jamie?
I'm trying to think. I'm going to say yes. I'm going to say Wales are going to win. I was confident against Fiji, mind. But I put it on Blue Sky. I was very confident as well that we'd win. But that went tits up. I'm going to go Wales by 5. Because I do think this is a winnable game. And we've got a recent record against the Aussies. So why not? Let's be positive. It would not surprise me at all if Wales won this game. It wouldn't surprise me at all. But
weirdly, I did have a feeling that we'd be more likely to win against Australia than Fiji, just because
why
of
is
the
that
matchup.
though? Because Fiji is the more winnable game. That's the thing. We've lost the most winnable game, haven't we?
But I feel like there's almost more pressure on it because of that. But yeah, I said it's just a weird feeling. I felt like the things that Fiji were good at were probably going to be a lot harder for us to deal with than necessarily some of the things that Australia are. I said it's a weird thing. I can't explain it. It's just more. Anyway, summing up, just to sum up all the predictions. Mark's gone for Wales by 1. I've gone Oz by 12. James has gone by Oz by 6 points, and Jamie is the most positive of us with Wales by 5.
Yeah, there we go. Let's end on a positive note. Okay, that's a wrap then, gents. Thank you, James, Harley, and Martin. We'll be back next week to pick the bones out of Wales, Australia. Hopefully, we'll get a win to talk about, because that would be nice. It's been a long time, isn't it? Over 400 days, like I said. So it would be nice to talk about the Wales win. But until then, take care and goodbye.
Nusta.